Season 2 of Putin's war in Ukraine is now underway, and while it's early, we're starting to get an idea of Russia's designs. Say goodbye to a push toward Dnipro, the notion was idiotic, and so long pipe dream pincer at 200-kilometer attempted encirclement of Ukrainian defensive positions on the eastern Donbas front that was stupid too. What we're getting instead is the same shit from the last 8 years. Direct attacks on the entire Donbas front lines. Not only is the entire front under pressure, but the Izyum salient is pushing towards Slavyansk, pre-war population 111,000, and Kramatorsk, population 157,000. When news of an international conflict breaks, it can be difficult to get a well-rounded view of what's going on. National media outlets in your country will have a different perspective than local news organizations on the ground. That's why I've been using ground news, to get a sense of how news stories are being covered by a variety of outlets. With the Ground News app you can see how international stories are being covered across the globe with access to 50,000 diverse news sources. See detailed information about each news outlet like who owns it, how reliable it is, and if it has a political bias. I find Ground News to be a really helpful tool in doing research for stories. You can download the app for free at ground.news/warthog or subscribe to get access to these advanced features and support a company that's working to make the media more transparent. The pincer maneuver would have aimed to cut off Ukraine resupplies to this entire region, starving a third of Ukraine's army into submission. Perhaps after Mariupol, which still hasn't fallen, Russia decided that would take too long. Parades must be marched on May 9 after all. So Russian troops are gunning for the region's two major population and cultural centers, cutting them off from supplies, and maybe attempting a Mariupol-style operation to take them. For once, a Russian move doesn't appear utterly idiotic. This is what they should have done at the start of the war when they were at full strength. Russia can't maintain long supply lines. This minimizes that deficiency while also making them less vulnerable to Ukrainian artillery hitting them hard from the west. And broad pressure across a wide line means they can keep doing their small-scale advances without having to figure out how to mass forces for a major singular push. In other words, it's making lemonade out of lemons. The amount of territory exchanging hands was minimal, but of course it's early. So Russia is making the best of the hand it's been dealt, but let's talk about that hand, because it's still not great. Russia began the war with 120 to 130 battalion tactical groups, which have a paper strength of 801,000 troops, 1,200 tanks, and around 5,000 infantry fighting vehicles. We've discussed at length how most BTGs showed up under strength and how few soldiers in a BTG are actually combat troops, 230 to be exact. The problem has only gotten worse as the war has attrited unit strength, dead, wounded, and destroyed equipment, and soldiers desert and outright refuse to redeploy after fighting in Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Sumy regions. Russia has lost at least 519 tanks and 838 armored fighting vehicles. Those are just publicly available, visually confirmed losses, which means the real number is even higher. So unbelievably, Russia has lost around half the tanks they likely started with, and those were their best, most modern tanks. The stuff coming in from reserve piles is 1960s scrap. The Pentagon thinks another 22 BTGs are currently being rebuilt retrofitted outside of Ukraine, and another 12 around Mariupol, though the open-source intelligence community has only been able to identify around 6. You look at those numbers, and wow, that sounds like a lot. Yet 22 are still hypothetical units, not engaged. Ukraine claims many of these units are refusing orders to deploy, and they've released intercepted calls supporting that assessment. Whether it's 6 or 12 around Mariupol, they're still stuck there trying to deal with only 1 to 2,000 remaining Ukrainian defenders in a massive city-sized factory, literally designed to withstand a nuclear attack, no joke. So for now, as the big offensive gets underway, we're talking 76 BTGs. At full strength, that would be 760 tanks, 3,000 infantry fighting vehicles, and 17,480 soldiers. Of course, we've seen Russia put all manner of unqualified, untrained soldiers in vehicles, so let's assume double that were thrown into the wood chipper. That's still only about 35,000 troops trying to take and hold an area that is hundreds of square miles, with deeply entrenched and protected defensive positions. If I were Russia, I'd station a garrison outside the factory and move everything else to the north. Not worth the lives, equipment, and effort to root out Ukrainians when they're cornered in this pocket. Of course, we know that Russia isn't fielding full-strength BTGs. They never did. The entire concept of the BTG was designed by grifters to make it easier to pilfer material and money. A regiment kept one BTG ready for missions like Syria and stole from the other two for villas, dachas, and vodka. The Russian army was ill-equipped to send 120 to 130 of its total 170 at the start of the war. It's even worse now. With enough artillery, air support, and frontal assaults, Russia might finally punch through some of the prepared lines. Seems kind of inevitable, actually. Then what? They fight their way to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk and once again find what they've found in every city of any significant size. Russia doesn't know how to do urban warfare, and a small, outgunned defensive garrison can tie up Russian forces nearly indefinitely. The two cities will be reduced to rubble, that we can assume. But that doesn't end resistance. In fact, it gives defenders more places to hide and ambush the enemy. And these two towns are not Mariupol, isolated, deep in the country's southeast corner, far from friendly lines. There's an entire Ukrainian army breathing down their necks just on the western edge of the Donbas region. By most estimates, 1/3 of the Ukrainian army is in Donbas, which means that most of the rest is right outside the door, preparing to engage. Meanwhile, Ukraine is on the offensive around Kharkiv, threatening Russia's supply lines. As for Kherson down south, Russia is laying down a wall of artillery, preventing Ukrainian forces, lacking sufficient armor and artillery of their own, from traversing that wide-open exposed terrain. I suspect Ukraine will prioritize the eastern Donbas front over Kherson's liberation for the time being. Still, Ukraine continues to reportedly roll back Russian forces from the Kryvyi Rih approach. One last thought, Russia must really be freaked out about arriving Western arms shipments and Putin's May 9 deadline, because this attack is coming at a really shitty time, spring rainy season. While the forecast is showing less rain than it did yesterday, it's still wet season, preventing the ground from drying out. Russia's heavy equipment will need to either stay on roads, where they are easy to ambush and target with artillery, or they risk a losing confrontation with General Mud. Not that any of the good guys are complaining, however. Ukraine could use all the help it can get. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. He's doing the job every day.